All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Look at that. It's the Mark Thompson Show, and there's no Mark Thompson. I'm Michael Schur, back with you for 4 days. Tim McAllister and, of course, Albert with us today, as always, carrying me through across the finish line this week. But we're not there yet. We have a great show today. We're going to have a great show tomorrow. We have good guests today. There's one guest who I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but his name's Mark Thompson. He'll be joining at 10:35 to talk about, or 11:35, 2:35 Eastern, to talk about whatever in the world he wants to talk to, because he said, would it be less than would it be okay if I came on and I called into the show? Part of me wanted to say, no, it wouldn't be okay. But we're having a good time here, and Kim and Albert and I, we got a thing going. But I said it was okay, and we'll just have to turn you a little bit more. So we've got that to cover. We've got David Katz in the second hour. We've got my friend Mark Caputo, who is a Florida-based political reporter. I would argue, if not the best, among the best. Just look at that. The finale that hits hard.
You hit the post.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I hit the post. Look at you with the hockey reference. Albert, you get a little,
that's a radio reference, but yeah.
I know, but it's a hockey. Yeah, it's a hockey reference too. Unwittingly, you made a hockey reference.
Look at that.
So the top story today that is happening is thank you very much, Karen Cooper, saying that Mark should be a little worried. Mark need not be worried. It's the Mark Thompson show, but I'll accept all flattery. The top story today is has to do with pardons, and it's not a Biden pardon. It's President Biden issued 1,500 acts of clemency and 39 pardons, late last night, and this is a world record, right? You all thought that they couldn't possibly break Barack Obama's record of 330. Not only did President Biden break it, he smashed that record. He's commuting the sentences of roughly 1,500 people who'd been released from prison and placed on home confinement during the coronavirus pandemic. So what that means is a lot of prisons were terrible places. Well, the prisons are not generally a good place to be in the first place, but they were terrible and dangerously terrible for those who worked there and served there during coronavirus because of social distancing and all of that, and passing there were people who were susceptible to the disease, etc. And so there was a lot more home confinement that happened. And today's announcement, which was decided on last night, the commutations were announced for those who have served out their home confinement sentences for at least 1 year after they were released. Prisoners were, so it's 1 in 5 prisoners, you'll recall. They were a population that was decimated by COVID. 1 in 5 prisoners, COVID-19. During that time, the president saying that he's going to be doing more in terms of clemency and pardons coming up. But his words, these are the words of President Biden: America was built on the promise of possibility and second chances. As president, I have the great privilege of extending mercy to people who have demonstrated remorse and rehabilitation, restoring opportunity for Americans to.
He left for just a moment, who he said, restoring opportunity for Americans to participate in daily life and contribute to their communities, and taking steps to remove sentencing disparities for nonviolent offenders, especially those convicted of drug offenses. And so it becomes this massive clemency day, really. The Associated Press calling it the largest single day act of clemency in modern history. I don't know if it will be a situation where Republicans say, there goes the Democrats, soft on crime again, or because of COVID, because these people have been confined at home anyway, if it will be something that people just accept. And President Biden says day by day, he is looking at more clemency petitions. And so this might not be the biggest day. He may have another big day where he offers clemency to all of these people. Even more people, as a matter of fact. He offered at least 39 pardons as well. I think it's a big deal. And on his way out of office, he leaves showing mercy. He leaves, with more pardons and more clemencies. He's still, though, mulling whether or not he wants to do preemptive pardons. So we'll see about that. It's something I think this is interesting. Bill Clinton he was on The View, and he was saying that he wouldn't dare offer President Biden advice on pardons, but let me offer advice on pardons. And he went on to say he doesn't think that President Biden should offer preemptive pardons. One of them would be to his wife, Hillary Clinton. He said Hillary did nothing wrong. She doesn't need a preemptive pardon. So don't worry about it at all. I thought that was interesting. Both of these issues we will bring up again with David Katz a little bit after noon to talk to him about what he feels about these preemptive pardons and all of the pardons that have been issued today. As we wait for Michael Schur to rejoin the show, he also, I know, wanted to talk today about Kash Patel and yesterday's announcement that Christopher Wray is going to step down when the Biden term ends as the director of the FBI. And one of the things that um, was interesting about this is that it's the when someone tells you who they are, believe them, right? This is the situation with Kash Patel. He has said over and over again that he would do all of these things as to Trump's bidding, going after Trump's enemies. He said some really horrible things. And Senate Republicans are saying, and they're the ones that will actually decide whether or not he gets this job or not, that they think he won't actually do the things he said. As a matter of fact, and I think it's just to appease everyone, but Senator John Cornyn of Texas tells the Huffington Post, sometimes people make statements in a political context that on further reflection, they say, well, that was basically for public consumption. So what is he saying? He's just saying what Patel's talking to talk, wants to look like the big man, that really he has no intention of doing Trump's bidding or getting in the way of Trump's enemies. Yeah, I don't know. He was promoting a book with Steve Bannon, and Cornyn said he expects Patel to be named the CIA director during Trump's second term. And he said this on Patel's vision for vengeance against Trump's enemies. And this is according to the Huffington Post. He said, we will go out, this is Patel, or Cornyn rather, we will go out and find the conspirators, rather, Patel said this, we will go out and find the conspirators, not just in the government, but in the media. Patel said, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. So furthering the lie, right? We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. We'll figure that out. But yeah, he said, we're putting you all on notice. So when he says something like that, when he says he's coming after the media, he's coming after conspirators, so-called conspirators, not just in the media, but in the government, we're not supposed to believe them. That's just him, thumping his chest and I don't know, spewing off testosterone. Is that what it is? No. When someone tells you something like that, believe them. And he said it, what, a week ago? 2 weeks ago? All of that should be used during the confirmation hearings. And Patel is already making the rounds on Capitol Hill, trying to get, lock up the votes so that the senators will vote for him. And I think these senators really only have so much room, so much wiggle room as far as, kicking out the nominees. They've already managed to peel away Matt Gaetz. So that was a pretty big get for them, right? No guarantee that Patel can get past the 50 votes needed. But I think in the scheme of things, with RFK Jr. waiting in the wings, RFK Jr. seems like the one that maybe might have the most pushback. We'll see if Kash Patel gets a lot of pushback. Cornyn said he met with Patel and suggested Patel confirmed his view that he wouldn't vindictively prosecute Trump's enemies. Here's what Cornyn said. I told him, I thought the task ahead was to restore the FBI to its former reputation as a nonpartisan, non-political institution. And he told me he agreed. Hi, Michael. Sure.
By the way, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I was reading everything you're reading, speaking to no one, apparently, because I was cut off. I had no idea I wasn't on the show. So I've gone through this.
Oh, no.
No. So keep going with John Cornyn. I mean,
he said, I think there's a difference between the hyperbole and the reality.
Yeah.
So,
and one of the things, and I don't know where I was cut off, so if I repeat myself, so be it. But what Cornyn is saying is, and Cornyn, you have to understand, is a high-ranking Republican senator who ran for the leadership and lost to John Thune, who's going to be the Republican leader when McConnell steps down from that position. And so he said this on the Steve Bannon show, and then he went on to say, sometimes people make statements in a political context that on further reflection, they say, well, that was basically for public consumption. Now, everything they say, the public has consumed this. And if you say something, the public is going to consume it because they deem it to be true. If Kash Patel went on a radio show, which he did do, and I don't know if you've read this quote, he said, this is Kash Patel speaking to Steve Bannon. We all know what kind of show he has. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. We'll figure that out. But yeah, we're putting you all on notice. And now we're told, don't believe this guy. Don't believe a thing this guy's saying. That was all just for public consumption. Well, again, the public has consumed it, and they have figured out that, maybe this isn't the right man with the right demeanor for the job. We're talking about him as if he's been confirmed. He's not been confirmed. And he needs 50. It's called lying.
That's right.
Right. That's exactly right, basically, right? It's like, it's lying. I'm sorry about the connection that I had, and I don't know where I'm repeating myself, but
it's okay. Tell me how you really feel.
Right. But Patel is making the rounds. He's speaking to other senators. The other thing is that Josh Hawley, a Republican from Missouri, who many of you may be familiar with him, said that Patel told him he would prosecute violent criminals. Okay, I mean, he's going to be the leader of the FBI. He'll prosecute violent criminals. Why are we supposed to believe that and not what Patel told us earlier when he said that he's going to go after all of Trump's enemies, right? And then Hawley went on to say, I don't think you're going to see the FBI going after journalists. Right? Josh Hawley is saying that. Why, if he said they're going to go after journalists, do you not think the FBI is going to go after journalists? And then Rick Scott said he didn't expect partisan prosecutions from the second Trump administration. There was a first Trump administration, right, that wanted to do that. There was the interregnum of Donald Trump between these two terms, where all he's talked about is going after people when he gets the presidency back. And now he's going to be president, and all of a sudden, we don't expect partisan prosecutions. I mean, that's pie in the sky. He said he didn't do it the first time. He's not going to do it the second time. He did actually press for prosecutions of his enemies in his first term, and he wanted, even in public, talked about prosecuting Hillary Clinton repeatedly, right? And then Jim Lankford, who is from Oklahoma, another senator, said he was skeptical of the descriptions of Patel vowing prosecutions before he was nominated, and then he would ask him about the reports. These aren't reports, Senator Langford. These are things that Kash Patel said to a radio host. These aren't reports. He said these things. He said, everything I read on the internet's not always true. Langford said, you can't argue with that, Senator, but I'll take the opportunity to ask him what his thoughts are. And then Richard Blumenthal, when asked, he said if Patel didn't actually mean what he said before that, this is a Democrat from Connecticut, if he's not going to do the things that he said he was going to do previously, how do we believe what he's going to tell us now? And that's exactly right. Again, worth reiterating, this guy needs 50 votes in the Senate, and he will likely get them. We'll just say it like that.
I think so too. I was saying though, when you dropped out, which by the way, your connection is so much better now, so I'm kind of glad that happened, is that there's only so many nominees they can shed, and they already successfully peeled Gates away. And they're looking at maybe RFK Jr. So how many can you say no to? And so maybe we're stuck with Kash Patel, especially since he's kind of doing Trump's bidding anyway.
By the way, you have to go in thinking you're stuck with all of them, because the Senate has traditionally and historically given deference to the choices of the president. And when that, we talked about this earlier in the week, when that goes away and that sort of traditional trust that you give goes away, those nominees step aside. They're either asked to step aside, or they see they see the iceberg coming and they say, I'm going to step away. And in Patel's case, the iceberg isn't there. I mean, if there was an iceberg, it was Christopher Wray, who had a 10-year deal, who signed a 10-year contract, Albert, and was only 7 years into that 10-year contract. So I think he stepped aside, and Gordon saying, can't believe anything these MAGAs say. It's true to an extent, but especially when they say, what I said isn't what I meant, right? And to Blumenthal, you say he's spot on. If they weren't telling us the truth then, why do we think they're telling us the truth now? Right. And it's a fascinating thing. Trevor in Hollywood coming in with $10 into the super chat. I ask this every time you're on the show, but I never get an answer. So I'll ask you why do I keep forgetting? Oh, right. Why do I keep forgetting so much? Yeah. Because Mark always intros me as I've forgotten more about politics than most people know. Is that what he says? I don't even know.
Something like that. And I always screw it up every time I have to say it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I forget about, because there's so much sports in this head too that I can't have room for everything. I've got to purge some of my. So as old Congresses go away, I'm sort of shocked at how much I don't forget of stuff that is unimportant and meaningless, and is there's no one that I can flex it in front of either. That's what's so that person won Larry Smith's seat in Hollywood, Florida. Larry came down from Long Island. He was the first New Yorker to win. Well, why do I know that? And why there's no one alive who cares about it? So, but anyway, thank you for supporting the show, and thanks for pointing out that I need to stop forgetting so many things.
There's another one as well. This one came in from No Contendo, and I'm sorry, No Contendo, you're so generous, but I always have the worst time understanding exactly how to decipher this. He says, "Congratulations, MAGA. America First means DEI hiring Gussa Patel over Nebraska, Iowa blonde-haired, blue-eyed police veterans." Okay. I don't know exactly what the reference is, but maybe you get it.
Yeah, I don't either, but we'll see. Maybe he can follow up, or she can follow up with a little bit about that. Yeah, I don't know, but it's a story that I see. Maybe I forgot it. How about that? Anyway, so we look at, and we'll talk a little bit more about what Rick Scott had to say with Mark Caputo. I don't even know when my signal cut out, but we have Mark Caputo on, a Florida-based reporter who is among the finest reporters in the country covering politics, and he can talk to us a little bit about what Rick Scott said in regards to Kash Patel, and we'll talk to him a little bit about the confirmations as well, and we will Kash Patel the hell out of this show, because we'll talk about it with David Katz a little bit too, in the whole scope of confirmations and what this means as far as law enforcement et cetera. So I don't. I think what you said is right, Kim. But these people, if anyone is a slaughtered lamb, they get slaughtered before they get voted on, usually in politics. And Kash Patel doesn't seem like that person. Matt Gaetz may already have been that person. And so No Contendo tells us that experienced white police officers were passed over to force Gussa Kash Patel into the FBI. Yeah, I don't know enough about that story. Maybe it's worth looking into. But if Kash Patel is a DEI hire or not, I don't know. Kash Patel has been a Trump loyalist, and the only thing worth its salt in Trump world is being loyal. And the moment you're not, then you're cast aside. But if you are loyal, and the more loyal you are, the higher up you rise in the food chain in Trump world. And then the moment, no matter how high you rise, the moment that loyalty goes away, you cannot fall harder. And it's been like that with many presidents in some ways. Richard Nixon among them. I think some of the most destructive presidents rewarded loyalty, though LBJ rewarded it as well. You do need, you want, everybody romanticizes Lincoln and his team of rivals. It doesn't work as much in the modern day because there's so much media and so many people talk to so many people that it makes that team of rivals idea, a little bit hollow. And as far as cabinet members who are going to be Democrats, Vice President Harris said she would have nominated a Republican to her cabinet. Mm-hmm. I think that Trump probably thinks Tulsi Gabbard's a Democrat, and he's doing that work, but I don't think he cares if he has a Democrat in his cabinet at all. And that's not what he's about. So he's about just whoever is loyal to him. There are a few Democrats who are loyal to Donald Trump out there.
I have a question for you, of the whole confirmation process. When it comes to Democrats and their whole role in this, can they drag their heels at all and kind of delay all the votes, or is that pointless?
Well, the only way you can delay floor proceedings, I mean, you can filibuster a bill, but you cannot delay a vote for very long. There are ways of delaying it, but when you're in the minority, which the Democrats will be when this is voted on, when you're in the minority, it's virtually impossible to manipulate what happens. And delaying it becomes sort of against mission, because you do want the president to have a cabinet. Many of them will say, well, otherwise then it is the dictatorship that we all said we didn't want to elect. So you want the president to have a cabinet, and those departments are set up to run with leadership, and it becomes very complicated if you delay too long. But if the Republicans will delay if they don't think that they have the votes, and they have all of the ways of doing that with their leadership. They can delay. When you're in the leadership, you can delay.
Yeah, that's interesting. So there's really nothing to do. How long does it usually take? Is it a long confirmation process? Because the hearings go on for days for some of these people. You can't. There's a finite amount of time. They meet with all the senators. They make these House calls that they're doing now, which always happens before the administration takes office. And then, generally speaking, the moment the new Congress is seated, a lot of those votes will happen. And so, I mean, you're going to get a new Congress on December 1st or thereabout, whatever. I guess it's January 1st. I mean, but it's it'll probably be the 2nd or 3rd. I don't know when those dates are. It's usually the day after the holiday. And then when the president is sworn in, when Trump is sworn in, sometimes they just on that day have lots of votes on some of his other nominees. So that's what's going to happen. And that's generally how it works. If there's someone who's in trouble, they generally let that person know he's in trouble and say, hey, listen, Patel, you got to go make the rounds again. You have to talk to, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana and Senator Harkin from, whatever, whoever it is. And then they'll go speak to those senators, get their
ducks in a row, and then they can have the vote. Or if it's not looking good, they'll say, hey, Kash, I think the jig is up, and you're going to have to either step aside or we're going to have to vote you down. We don't have the votes for you. So, but when you see it going long, it's not a good thing for the nominee generally.
Okay.
Unless there are bureaucratic or sort of reasons of like clerical reasons for it. They have to submit forms that haven't been looked at. One senator can say, I need to see his make sure that his FBI record, for example. I need to read it again before I can vote on this.
Thank you for the civics. I appreciate it.
You got it. Always happy for the civic. It's not. Yeah, I don't know. It's just rules and procedure, and it's also these aren't even rules and procedure. These are sort of like going off of what has happened before, and that does change as well. So anyway, so for Patel, I would put him toward the top if you're betting on this sort of thing and you're betting on who are the people that might not get confirmed. I wouldn't put him at the top. I'd sort of put him in the middle of the top. I would say that my least likely, I would say, is Kennedy, then Hegseth, then Gabbard, then Patel. I would put him in fourth place.
You think Gabbard is above Patel? That's interesting.
For not getting confirmed, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be, yeah. I don't think, I'm not, like, I wouldn't put a lot of money on any of them. But if I had to, somebody said you had to make $100 bet on one of them, I would say that Kennedy would have the most problems. I mean, that the notion that a lot of Republicans who know who RFK Jr. is in all different facets of what he does are not going to be happy about him. And then there are commercial reasons and business reasons and constituent reasons not to support him for Republicans. Yeah. He's the only one that comes with that, though, and so I don't. But again, when I was talking to Trump voters this past, couple of years, they all said, when asked who their favorite the favorite Democrat would be, if you don't want President Biden to be there, this was before Biden stood down. If you don't want President Biden to be there, who's a Democrat that you could see supporting, if any? And it was always Kennedy, and he was often the only one.
Wow.
Yeah, and so.
And I look at him as just like warning sign, red flag, danger zone every time no matter what you're talking about with him, it's awful.
Well, a lot of what resonated with them was the fact that where Kennedy stood on COVID.
Vaccines.
COVID was divisive, and they couldn't stand Dr. Fauci. Kennedy has a feud going with Dr. Fauci going back many, many years before we ever heard the word COVID. And so he had people on their side already. And it would be to me, he's still the one that is in the most tenuous position because of his name and his history. But that you understand why they like him more than they like others, perhaps. And so that that's to me, what we're going to be watching these confirmation hearings, like so much, and you already hear these Republicans saying it. You get excited. You think, oh my God, this person is stepping back, I remember with Lindsey Graham very often, who soft pedals so much, and then he's right there with the Republicans at the end. So they give a little bit of rhetoric, and then they vote with their party, and they vote also to protect themselves from the wrath of Trump or getting primaried, as we talked about with Joni Ernst. So, so we every once in a while, I like to bring on somebody who's forgotten more about radio than most of us have ever known, who's forgotten more about streaming than most of us have ever known. And to me, it's a pleasure to be able to do that today, to bring a guest onto the Michael Schur Show. Mark Thompson, welcome.
Wow, I see what you did. Very funny.
I didn't mean to do it.
It was a little much, a little extreme. Well, I thought not a bad way to go. It's great to see you. I've been watching the show. You're amazing, of course, and you make it look easy, but you just have all of this knowledge, and we all benefit from it. And it's been a lot of fun to hear you, just kind of riffing around with Kim and the crew. So,
Well,
yeah.
thank you for the very kind words, and thank you for entrusting me with your to house it while you're gone here. And I see, from the background that you are one of the lucky 1,500 who was granted clemency. So congratulations.
I'm checking out various ports of call for permanent residence, given the panic that set in. I read everything. I read all the panic you could possibly read, and there's certainly a lot to the gangster regime has begun, and I already see the out of the primordial ooze, some pretty ugly swamp monsters have climbed, and I'm reading and listening with great interest. And yes, I wish I could move here, and I don't even know where here is. The days run together. Courtney's on a hike.
Can you tell us what we're looking at in the background there, Mark? What are we seeing?
This is, I believe, the Dominican Republic,
Okay.
where we have stopped. We were in Barbados, which I really liked. Yesterday we were there, and this is one of those places and missions and journeys whereby you will like every place that you stop. There's not a stiff in the lot. So
be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
I've been trying to limit my alcohol to after 4 p.m. and I don't recommend alcohol necessarily to anybody. I actually had begun pretty effectively sort of winding down, but I really wound it up on this trip. It's gone the other way. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what vacations are for. I'm wondering.
Well, that's what Courtney is encourages me that way. So
blame others. I think that's always a good thing. To just blame others for everything that's wrong. I was wondering, when you were in, I guess the port in Barbados would be Bridgetown, the capital, I'm guessing, right? You get into port there, you go off lots of souvenir stands. Did you buy a mug for anyone?
Well, it's very funny because I've heard you mention the mug thing now several times, and I, of course, initially felt guilty, and then the second time you mentioned it, I felt really guilty, and then the third time you mentioned it, I thought, let's just order the guy a mug already. And the fourth time you mentioned it, I started to feel like I wish you'd stop mentioning this mug thing. It's in the pipeline. Well, but let me finish. The fifth time you mentioned it, and the sixth time you mentioned it, I actually thought, I like this as a runner, and I don't ever want to give him a mug now. But sadly, I have ordered you a couple of mugs. So.
That's fine, and don't get ornery with me on my show. I'm saying it because Randy Bruning, who I can't find the post now, but just a little while ago, someone in the comments section it must be there it is, Randy Brunling saying, Michael, ask Mark if you can get a mug. So I'm doing the people's work here. It's not me.
That's what I mean. That's become a runner. That's brilliant. I love that Randy's hip to that. But I will give you a mug, but I still think you should complain about merch because, by the way, the mugs are available. Getmarkmerch.com. I've got chit mugs coming to the house, and I pay for it the same way everybody else does. I don't get a discount or anything. But speaking of discounts, though, Michael, I do have to mention this. Our virtual holiday meetup is the 21st. I heard you mention it before. This is not a show. It's not broadcast. And so as a result, you'll see people coming through who you wouldn't see necessarily coming through a regular broadcast that we would do. Plus, people speak a little more openly. I think you'll kind of have fun hearing us all sort of riff about life. And we have games and giveaways, and among the giveaways will be mugs and t-shirts from the merch store, brand new mugs and t-shirts. So anyway, it's Saturday, December 21st, 5 o'clock in the evening on the West Coast, 8 o'clock in the evening on the East Coast. You sign up at our PayPal, and there are PayPal links underneath all our videos. So every video has a PayPal link. Lock it up with a $50 donation, and then note with the donation meetup. And just so that we know that $50 is directed to that. And then drop us an RSVP, mtsmeetup@gmail.com. But mostly, it's just a good time. And it's our big end of year meetup. And it's funny, we were going to do a holiday meetup, but we got enough in the way of email with people asking to do holiday meetup, that's really the thing that started it. And now it looks like it may be one of our best meetups yet, because there are just a lot of people who are going to be available and excited about being there. As I say, we've got giveaways going on, so I think it could be a lot of fun. So I hope everybody will jump in.
I want to ask, have your toes been in the sand yet?
Technically, yes, but I was walking to a bar, so I wasn't really. Yeah.
Well, I mean, sometimes.
Let me be serious for a minute. One of the things because it just came on the TV the other day, I always feel a little guilty about like joking about going to the bar or having a drink in my hand, because I feel like it's not. I feel like the society is evolving past it. I mean, for example, and this was on TV the other day, that movie Arthur, where he's drunk all the time. He's a rich drunk guy. Do you remember that, Michael? Arthur?
Course, yeah. When you get lost between the moon and New York City.
The moon in New York City, Dudley Moore. I don't know if Kim, if you ever saw that. Maybe it was before your time.
Absolutely funny.
Yeah, but it was very funny, and it's a funny movie. But I thought, I wonder if you pitched that movie now, whether there'd be an issue with the fact, like, well, he's drunk all the time, but he's rich, but he's a pleasant drunk, and he's funny, and he laughs in a comical way. And so it brings me into this kind of, I'm in this place where I never know whether it's okay to joke about the fact that essentially, I can't remember 3 hours of yesterday afternoon,
You're overthinking.
Michael,
you're on a cruise. You're on a cruise. Okay. You work very hard. You're dedicated to what you do. You have every right in the world. It's not like this is what you are every single day of the year, right? I mean, that's a little different. Right. I think Arthur. Okay. I think Arthur would be made today, but because I think it was more about Dudley Moore than anything. So if Dudley Moore still existed today, then that it was a vehicle for his kind of comedy, and I don't think anybody else.
I'll give you another one that I don't think you could get made today, Mr. Magoo. You could not go in and say the idea is that this guy can't see well at all. He's effectively legally blind, and he's driving over things. And I mean, am I right?
Making fun of the disabled is a no-no. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think you can get that made either. But I don't think I don't think there was a clamoring to get it made back then either. I just sort of it was one of those happy accidents.
How dare you insult Mr. Magoo? No, I mean, that was one of the cornerstones of my childhood.
You're saying it couldn't get made, and then now I'm insulting it. I mean, how is it?
Yeah, at the time, it was special. I'm saying, I embraced what was a flawed concept, and today, but the idea of Magoo. Magoo is. They even did a Christmas Carol with Magoo. He plays all the. Isn't that right? He plays Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yeah, he plays Ebenezer Scrooge. It was Jim Backus voiced it, as you should know.
That's right. That's right.
See,
George Magoo.
Daniel Martin says very accurately, you could not make Blazing Saddles today, and I'd have to probably agree that you couldn't make Blazing Saddles today. You couldn't make Birth of a Nation either, thankfully. So I guess there's some progress. No Contendo says Police Academy you couldn't make. I'm not trying to say that things have been going well while you've been on vacation, drinking. But Michael D writes, Mark, do you plan to be a regular Thursday guest on the Michael Schur Show? MSS.
I'd like Michael to take the show for 6 months. Believe me.
Which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
I can't catch my breath. So
yeah.
It is. By the way, speaking of No Contendo, who is a frequent participant in the chat, I have begun to speak No Contendo. So like when he comes in with all the abbreviations and stuff, I'm far better at it now because I know when I see his name that it just changed the way I read it. So I saw you before on the Kash Patel text that he sent, and I thought, oh my God, this is wild. I actually understand what No Contendo is saying. So you have to kind of learn members of the audience in the way they speak.
Well, we were just stumbling over that. Josh writes, Mark's cocktail has a full-size umbrella. Yeah, because you got some nice shade. But yeah, no. When we asked for clarification, No Contendo clarified sort of.
Okay, good. Yeah. So well, I just like that you seem to be getting really comfortable, which is it takes time to get the rhythm of things. So it's cool that you're there. I'm alarmed though from a distance at the fact that Kash Patel and Hexith may get through. I saw Carrie Lake is going to become the head of Voice of America. So,
Yeah.
if there might be an opportunity to work for Carrie Lake.
Yeah, well, we'll be talking a little bit of politics later in the show with Mark Caputo, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about too. Is like these people, I mean, but while you were away, also, I don't know if you know that Kimberly Guilfoyle is going to be the ambassador to Greece. So
yeah, what an expensive way to get rid of your ex, but at least you don't have to pay for it. The taxpayers of America pay for it.
Yeah, that's true, which is really good. You ride on our coattails, and I said, it's.
We're happy to take care of any other uncomfortable relationships that the Trump family has. That's
he
what
looks
the
at everything
taxpayers are here for.
Like it's the family business. It's amazing. Yeah, but
exactly. So I don't want to overstay my welcome here because I did just kind of crash land on the show. I know you got David Katz coming up. Kim can tell me if I should kind of wrap up, but I really did want to just say hello and thank everybody for all the support of the show, supporting Michael and of course Kim and Albert and Tony are great, so you don't have to worry about that. But,
so I have two questions for you. First, well, one's a statement and one's a question. First, I want everyone to know that you are really impressing me with the high romance. This is a trip where you have whisked Courtney away for her birthday, and I think that's really romantic. So well done, you. And also, why do you not have a Mark Thompson show hat on? What is on your head? Are you wearing like a white MAGA hat? What's happening?
Well, I want to interrupt and say nothing says romance than going to the stern of the ship and doing a Zoom with a show. I mean, if that isn't romantic, what is?
No, Courtney's on a hike today to a waterfall, which is quite beautiful. She sent me pictures already, and I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. I've got a bad foot already, which is a result of my, as you know, my prowess on the tennis court. Many an hour that I clocked out there, and I've worn out the cartilage in my left big toe, and it's horribly painful. So I can't really walk a long distance. I suffer through it. I don't complain about it except for maybe every 7 or 8 minutes. And so the idea is that it could be maybe an excruciating experience to be alongside me while we climb to the waterfall. So I've let her go do that by herself, and then she'll be back later. She's having a great time, and we had a great dinner. In fact, there were cakes in all these different places. There was a cake in the room. There was a special, and this is all from the staff. It was really, there's a cake at dinner. There was another cake in recognition of her in it, like a third venue. It was pretty. She said it was her best birthday ever. So kind of cool.
Great. That's
what was fantastic. The second question? Oh, the hat is, doesn't it say,
Antigua, West Indies, Antigua, WFI, Antigua, West Indies.
Yeah, West Indies, exactly. That's it's not a MAGA hat. So
is that? It seems like a shark or a marlin or a red or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I just we try to pick up some hats wherever we go. We pick up some stuff. But I would say that as an intrepid explorer, this has been a sort of low level, low friction kind of experience for me. I've really put the exploration to the back burner. So
if we were on the phone and not on the air, I'd be saying, how's the gambling going? So I'll just say it. How's the gambling going? That's what I'm asking.
I had a great first night, and then got obliterated last night. And I'm going back for a third night, and we'll see how it goes. There's a very small stakes poker game, which I've dominated, but it's just fun more than anything else because the stakes are extremely low. But the big money in craps, etc., up, down. It's not. I'm not taking the Bitcoin ride that everybody else is taking right now. I'm up and down. It's choppier. Yeah.
Well, let everyone know that let Courtney know that everyone in the comments section of the show is wishing her a happy birthday.
Oh, that's sweet, and she'll be with us on the 21st. If anybody's at the holiday virtual meetup, Courtney will be there on camera, which she doesn't like to do, but she will be there on camera. So that's kind of cool.
There's
She
a lot of
redesigned a bunch of, like the logo and the merch and everything. You should check it out. Some of that stuff is hers. So she's got a good eye for that. The chit mug, Kim, just because you're on, very hot right now. We got a flood of chit orders. Yeah.
chit. Absolutely. A lot of people are asking whether you have a tile in your luggage this time. Last time you were on a cruise, somebody walked away with your luggage. It took like 5 years to get it back. So are you being a little more careful with your items?
It did take 2 months to get my luggage back from the last cruise when they were supposed to just take it to the dock from the boat. That is absolutely true. This time I have a tile in there. I have an air tag, and I also have my name there, but I don't know if that'll matter, because we had it fully labeled the last time. But anyway, yes, we're more prepared for that eventuality than we might have been the last time.
And lastly, Jennifer writes, Mark, I see you pouring it on after you tried to sell Courtney off to criminal justice Ken.
We did have a really handsome criminal justice guy on the show, Michael, and I told Courtney it would be okay with me if she wanted to go away with him, because I felt he was so much more, I don't know. I mean, I can see a better deal when it comes along, and I think that's just a much stronger deal. So, but she didn't go for it. So
Michael wants to know if you'll give a second week to Michael Schur. Look at this.
Oh, wow. I would happily give him a second week. Well, I do have to talk to you about extending your deal with us, Michael, not for next week, but for but I thought I'd let the dust settle before I ask.
Yeah, let the dust settle before you ask.
But it's a sign of we really do love you. And I see all the great comments. And I've gotten a few emails as well, and I'm just delighted that that people have, love you as much as I do, and I hope that you're beginning to settle in and loving it back. So
yeah, I'm having the best time. Your listeners are great. The guests have been great, and the streak continues with great guests today, like you.
Oh, there you have it. All right, so enjoy David Katz, and everybody. Thank you for supporting the show, and from here I will continue to monitor from my far-flung outpost. Michael, I'm watching. So
well, I know I never like, it's one big ring camera, isn't it? Yeah, it just seems what's going on.
All right,
having a great
time.
Sales.
Okay. Bye.
Look at that, Mark Thompson. Boy, we're all just sort of like, I wish that we were signing off and going back to the Lido deck right
now. The Mark Thompson Show.
Guess who is coming to the inauguration, Michael Schur, or who was at least invited to the inauguration?
I believe that you are saying that she may come to the inauguration.
Who's she? Oh, Xi Jinping?
Yeah.
If that's what you mean.
Yes, that's
Xi got invited.
She. But yeah,
Trump is this? I mean, I guess it's less offensive than inviting Vladimir Putin, but this is still really weird. What are like dictators from around the world going to show up?
Well, it's there's a difference between the China. There shouldn't be, but the Chinese leader and another like he wouldn't have. Like, it would be more of a thing if he was trying to get Kim over here, right? I mean, not you.
Yeah.
And so I think that but I don't know why Xi Jinping would come, because he would only be humiliated in that inauguration speech. It would be talking about taxes and tariffs and holding Chinese responsible and whatnot. It's almost like a setup. So I can't imagine. Apparently, this invitation did not go out recently. It went out, or somewhat recently, after Trump won the election. He invited him to the inauguration. I don't see how it would benefit Xi to come to this inauguration.
Well, it would really make a statement that America's headed in a different direction if Xi Jinping shows up at Trump's inauguration. It really would kind of hammer home that we've changed course and we're going full steam in a different direction.
Yeah, there's no question. There's something, if you want to look at it in a way that isn't about surprise, there's something somewhat olive branchy about it if you look at it, if you try and look at it in another way. I mean, I don't think it would be met. I think were he to invite Putin, it would be met with much greater skepticism and outrage than to have the Chinese leader there. I think that there's a reason to say, okay, this is a way of saying that we're going to be dealing with the Chinese and we are going to be respectful and ask for their respect. But if it were anyone but Trump, I would think that. And with Trump, my first reflex would be to say, nah, he wants something more out of this. He's toying with something by inviting him to his inauguration. And so I don't see him accepting that. I don't see him accepting because I think that he would in some way be humiliated, and then Trump would do some sort of a victory dance about whatever it was he said in his address.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if Xi accepts the invitation or not.
Yeah, my guess is I'm going to go with no. I mean, we're making lots of guesses on the show today, but I'm going to go with absolutely he will not. But stranger things have happened, and people have come to Trump events who you wouldn't expect. Remember, he invited some of Bill Clinton's accusers to a debate, humiliate his opponent, and it's just he makes a mockery and he tries to do everything as if it is a reality show. The presidency is a reality show. Parts of it are, but it's also the presidency, and it all matters. Yeah. And these leaders know it too. They're him in that way. So that's true. So Kim, we have David Katz coming. I just like you. I need you to help me along here. We have David Katz coming in. Do you want to do the news now? And then
sure.
David Katz. How's that?
Yeah, we can do some news. He'll be along in a few minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes. So we definitely have time for news.
All right, let's do a little news.
Okay.
All right.
Albert, there it is. I knew it was coming. On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. A new report reveals there were 26 FBI informants in Washington, D.C. during the January 6th Capitol riots. This is from the Justice Department Inspector General report, which says, however, only 3 of the confidential human sources were tasked by the Bureau to report signs of domestic terrorism. The remaining 23 all went on their own. The report goes to say that there were no FBI undercover agents on the scene on January 6th. A wildfire in Malibu on the Southern California coast continues to rage. The Franklin Fire has burned more than 4,000 acres in and around the affluent community of Malibu. It has been driven by the high Santa Ana winds. A number of structures have been damaged or destroyed since this fire broke out late Monday night, sending 20,000 residents fleeing under evacuation orders. It is currently just about 7% contained at latest count. An indictment may soon be announced against the suspect charged with murdering United Healthcare's CEO in New York City. ABC News, reporting the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, started presenting evidence to a grand jury in the hopes of securing a murder indictment against Luigi Mangione. Governor Kathy Hochul says as soon as that indictment happens, she'll sign a warrant to get Mangione extradited to New York. Mangione, by the way, fighting that extradition. 3 men are accusing Sean Diddy Combs of sexual assault. NBC News reports 3 lawsuits were filed anonymously in New York State Supreme Court today. The alleged victims say Combs served them spiked drinks that caused them to lose consciousness, then sexually assaulted them. The incidents all allegedly happened between 2019 and 2022. A missing U.S. man free after being held for months in Syria. Travis Timmerman of Missouri said he was held in prison after he entered Syria on what he said was a pilgrimage. Thousands of detainees have been released from Syrian prisons following the fall of their president, Bashar al-Assad, over the weekend. The Missouri State Highway Patrol said the 30-year-old had been reported as missing in May. No, I'm not missing anymore. Apparently, he was in a Syrian prison, of all places, and now he is free. as mentioned earlier in the show, President Biden is commuting the sentences of about 1,500 people and pardoning 39 others of nonviolent crimes. The White House says today's announcement is the single largest one-day act of clemency in modern history. Those having their sentences commuted were on house arrest during the pandemic, and they have obtained employment and reintegrated into their communities, that according to administration officials. A husband and a father who police say faked his own death at a Wisconsin lake in August and fled the country is finally now back in the United States. That according to the Green Lake County Sheriff's Office. Ryan Borgwart texted his wife in August that he was kayaking and heading to shore soon, but then he never came home. Officials alleged Borgwart may have been involved with a woman in Eastern Europe. He was released today on $500 bond. That's it? $500? That's not very much. Come on. Should be more than that, you know?
Seems so.
President-elect Trump says he wants the American worker to wake up and love to go to work for a lot of money. Oh, I'm all for that. He says he wants the American worker to be invested in the economy. He made those comments while ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street. So we're all going to love our jobs, and we're all going to get paid a lot of money to love our jobs. All right. That's what he's got going for us. New Los Angeles District Attorney Nathan Hochman has reportedly transferred 2 deputies who were seeking resentencing for the Menendez brothers. Variety citing sources today who says Nancy Theberge had been removed as the head of the DA's resentencing unit, while Brock Lunsford is no longer in the DA's post-conviction unit. In October, the 2 officials petitioned a judge to reduce the brothers' sentences to make them eligible for parole. George Gascon said he was reopening the Menendez case, taking another look at that sentencing. I guess Nathan Hochman wants nothing to do with that. So there are a record number of people expected to travel for the holidays. AAA is saying about 120 million people will travel 50 miles or more between December 21st and January 1st. So it's going to be really busy at the airports. It's 3.5% increase over last year, and finally back to pre-pandemic levels. In 2019, AAA says 119 million Americans traveled over the holidays. So this year, 120 million. It means the airports are going to be extra packed. BuzzFeed is selling the studio behind the popular YouTube show called Hot Ones. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a group of investors that includes the show host Sean Evans buying First We Feast for $82.5 million. This YouTube thing is a big business. Hot Ones sees Evans ask celebrities questions as they eat chicken wings that increase the spiciness throughout the interview. This show has more than 14 million subscribers on YouTube. Very, very successful, the Hot Ones. And now, again, it's being sold. So there you go.
I've seen it. That's fun.
I've seen it too. That's kind of funny, right? Are you a spicy guy?
Better than Drunk History, which was funny once, but the Hot Ones is good. Yeah, I'm a spicy guy. I've gotten my spice tolerance has increased as I've gotten older too.
Okay, I'm not a spice girl at all. Mm-mm.
No, I was not a spice person. I've always liked Cajun spice, but now I still don't love some of the really, really hot, really spicy Thai food that goes to the end. I can't do it, but I'm getting there.
Lastly, and this from People magazine, the youngest son of President-elect Donald Trump is being described as popular with the ladies during his first semester at New York University. People reporting Barron Trump is being described as tall and handsome by his classmates. Trump arrived on the NYU campus in September, along with security guards during first day of classes. Incoming and former First Lady Melania Trump had previously said she didn't think it would be possible for her son to have a normal college experience. So that's what's going on with Barron. Melania Trump, by the way, Michael Schur, doesn't look like she's going to be a full-time First Lady. She's kind of just told everyone she's not going to be there full time. She's checked out of this.
And the president-elect evaded a question about it. He sort of you saw at the end of the campaign, she gave a lot of interviews. She'll be around. I don't know how often, but But there was a question asking if she will live at the White House, which he did not give a direct answer to. So
I don't think she really wants to go back. I don't know who's going to make decisions on state dinners and China patterns. Maybe that's when she'll fly back and just, sketch all that out. Then maybe that can be done remotely.
yeah, it could be done remotely. Well, I mean, between his terms, Grover Cleveland got married, so maybe between his terms, Donald Trump will find a different first lady, and in the next weeks, and then that problem solved.
If it doesn't work out for Kimberly Guilfoyle in Greece, maybe she can come back and do that.
Well, that's true. She has to be confirmed too, by the way.
I said lastly, but I'll give you this one as a last one. Best-selling author James Patterson is giving hundreds of independent booksellers across the United States holiday bonuses of $500 each. Patterson has written more than 140 novels. He's sold more than 400 million copies worldwide. Since 2015, he's been showing his gratitude to booksellers by rewarding them with holiday bonuses. But this year, 600 small bookstores will be getting a $500 gift from Patterson. In a statement released through his publisher, Patterson says booksellers save lives. He said, "I'm happy to be able to acknowledge them and all their hard work this holiday season." So that's nice, kind of giving it back a little bit.
That's great. Our independent booksellers are really important. And if you buy books online, go to bookshop.org, because you are buying it instead of going to one of the bigger outfitters, the biggest. You're buying that book from an independent bookstore. It may take a day or two longer than your Prime, which gets there in an hour, but you're fine. You're not going to start it for a couple of days usually anyway. So go to bookshop.org to get your books. It's pretty great.
I'm finding more and more that I'm reading books on my Kindle app and not buying like the real hard copy of the book.
I don't. I mean, I still, to me, it's a tactile experience to read, right? I don't like turning the pages. I also read a lot of nonfiction. So I don't know that you can't do this on a Kindle because I've never read a book on a Kindle, but I go back and try and remember who, like I'll read somebody did something or served somewhere or was married to someone, and I don't remember. So I go back very quickly to find out. So there's a lot of index use in nonfiction too.
Okay. You sound like I don't know if I want to say you sound like a smart guy or you sound old. I don't know. One or the other.
No, go with dull. Go really dull. No, I just read. I read nonfiction a lot. I read some fiction, but I read nonfiction a lot. So.
This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Speaking of a great experience, I've got my vanilla tea all filled into the cup today. The holiday blend, amazing. I can't say enough good things about CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. From the way they source their beans to how fresh everything is to the tea, which I am completely addicted to. They have the winter solstice tea, which won't be around very long, so you got to snap it up, and the holiday blend as well. Really, really popular. You can get 10% off of the coffee or tea or whatever you order at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com at checkout. In the little codes there, type in Mark T all together, MARK T, and that'll get you 10% off of your order at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash it with your iron rod. Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
What he's got going here is a situation.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one too?
I offer this sincere apology to you today.
Everything is going extremely well.
Call me a liar. Now what you call me?
You, sir, are a liar.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
Liar, liar, your pants are on fire!
A Google told me.
Can you let him finish, sir?
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
No, no, no.
I'm going to tell you what I think.
What are the porn stars doing?
Do you have a secret now?
Doesn't anybody but a weed?
100% effective. How about that?
Say what?
And this is their new host.
There is no defense for my conduct.
I misspoke. I stand corrected.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Time's up, mother effers.
Hey, we're back. Are we back? Yeah, I think we're back. I promised for the 3 days that Albert was doing this that I was going to take an indulgence, and we will do, whether you like it or not, 47 seconds of sports. So Albert, Bill Belichick is now Chapel Hill Belichick. What do we think?
It's weird. I thought he'd just stay in the NFL, and knowing what former players have said about his temperament, to see him do that to some young kids his girlfriend's age, it's going to be funny and weird, but I'm willing to see where this goes.
No, and I liked the parodying of them. They were kind of, imitating what it would be like on a recruiting visit, with Bill Belichick speaking directly to the kids and scaring them into not going to UNC. But he's a good football mind and has proven it. So going to Chapel Hill, pretty interesting. And then one other, because it really was promised as 47 seconds of hockey. We now are down to 20. Sharks have a game tonight at St. Louis. New coach there. What do we think?
New coach, your former goalie from a while back is making his debut also.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I just need to see progress from the Sharks. They just keep on playing well. Losing is fine as long as we're playing well and developing. That's all that matters. Not like Chicago. Chicago not doing a rebuild correctly.
Fantastic. All right. That should be about 47 seconds. Already complaints, people saying, sports, 47 seconds is plenty. I say, so we got a sports yuck. I mean, come on, 47 seconds. Wasn't that bad. What would you rather talk about Elon Musk crossing the $400 billion barrier? All right, we can talk about that. If that's what you'd rather talk about, we'll talk about that. Elon Musk became the first person whose net worth tops $400 billion. To give you an idea, it's $429 billion. Jeff Bezos. Poor little Jeff Bezos is only worth $244 billion.
So sad.
So it's we should play the funeral march for that. It's just so the taps. It's just so sad. It was last counted at $384 billion by the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, and now it's at $429. And you wonder where that wealth comes from. Listen to this. Since the election, shares of Tesla have soared almost 70%, lifting the value of his stake to about $165 billion. So since the election, the presidential election has sent it, and it's not like this is somebody who wants to get rid of fossil fuel, who has this great plan, Donald Trump, to get rid of fossil fuel, and it'll be great for the American electric car. No, it's quite the opposite. And yet that election propelled him there. So I guess Donald Trump is already putting money in people's pockets, which is what he promised he would do.
Your sound is glitching a little bit, but I will say that it's interesting. I thought people were trying to put these stickers on their Teslas saying, I bought it before Musk went nuts, or this is not support of Musk. All around California, people are buying these stickers like, I'm not a Musk person, don't lump me in with those people. So it's interesting that sales of Teslas have increased across other parts of the country.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, it's not just that they've increased; it's that he now is in a position to make his company more valuable because he's the richest public servant, because he's going to be working on the Department of Government Efficiency under President-elect Trump, and that will, of course, allow him to do things that the Tesla shareholders and the like think are going to make their company more valuable, whether it's X, which he also owns, SpaceX, which he owns. So it's going to be there's going to be a lot of Elon, and he's there to maybe protect it. And that's what people are interested in. So anyway, we have a new 400 billionaire, which is just
nice.
What
we needed one of those.
We didn't even, we hadn't had one, and good we have one. What else we need is a good attorney to come in here and talk to us a little bit about so many of the legal stories that are playing out, and they always are. But these are both fascinating in a social way, and we talk about, of course, the United Healthcare CEO's murder in New York, and then we talk about a lot of what's happening at the FBI. So it's a pleasure to welcome David Katz into the Mark Thompson Show. David, thanks for coming on with the club host. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
So let's start, David, in Altoona, Pennsylvania, a sentence I've never said. But let's talk about a little bit about extradition, a little bit about this case, and then we're learning too about the attorney, Dickey, who is going to be representing Luigi Mangione. Tell us where this stands now, as far as you know. I know they're waiting for extradition.
Yeah, I think that they're fighting extradition in Pennsylvania. I think that will be unsuccessful. I don't think that they have really a ground to stand on to win the extradition hearing. You know, normally you can contest it, Michael, on identity. Say it's not you, it's someone who looks just like you or has a very similar name. It doesn't look at all like that's going to be his defense with this mountain of evidence apparently against him. I think that he may want to take a look at the discovery, that attorney in Pennsylvania. I think they do have to make a prima facie case, which means they have to show some discovery. And you always want to see that. If you just sign the papers that you waive extradition and you go back to New York, you don't get the discovery in that process. So he wants to see at least some of the evidence against his client. I don't think he'll ultimately be the attorney. I don't know if he's a member of the bar in New York. There are ways that you can be admitted, what we call pro hoc vice, just for one case. Maybe you have to get a New York attorney to associate with you, but I just don't think he's going to end up being the attorney in such a high profile case in New York City. And that's where it's going to end up in just a few weeks.
Yeah, that's interesting, because a lot of the lay people don't understand it. I mean, it seems like it's cut and dried. Of course, he's being extradited. Look, we have everything here, but there are legal reasons to do it as a delay tactic anyway, to give him time to find a New York attorney if Dickey isn't, and if Dickey's going to go through that process, it probably takes a minute. But it's sort of to slow the roll a little bit too, isn't it?
I think it's to slow the roll a little bit. You know, one thing that we don't really know is how competent the Mangione is. He seemed to be a real high achiever. And then he had this 6-month period of time where he got very estranged from his family. He seemed to have withdrawn. This may have been related to excruciating back pain that he felt he wasn't getting proper medical care for. And somehow he blamed not only United Health, but this CEO for that lack of care. That's certainly the way it looks now in terms of motive. And I don't think he's going to be held incompetent, but from, as you say, what looks like a mountain of evidence against him, DNA, fingerprints, photos. I don't think he's going to have any alibi. I think he's actually the guy who's there, and they'll be able to prove that. People will come and identify him from the hostel and from all kinds of other places. So I think he plans to make some kind of a mental defense, which is very difficult. Many of us in California remember the Twinkie defense that was made up in San Francisco. And we remember some of the other famous defenses that stopped short of insanity, which is a very high burden to show that you're actually insane. In many states, it's not knowing the difference between right and wrong. There's also something called diminished actuality, also very difficult to show applies in your case. There's an issue, who has the burden of proof, but still, it's a very high mountain to climb for a defendant to have a jury come back and say on a crime like this that you were either insane, temporarily insane, or that you had this so-called diminished actuality. So I think he's facing a conviction for second-degree murder when this all plays out.
And so let me ask you about that. The second degree versus first degree. There are three things that I want to ask you about: second degree versus first degree. His arraignment. Speaking just what you talked about, at his arraignment, he was asked if there was any, and I'm paraphrasing this because I don't remember it verbatim, but if there was any kind of mental breakdown or drug use or anything like that, and he said no at his arraignment. Does that matter? Does that play, or is that something that is happening under a time of duress?
Well, his attorney should have advised him not to answer any question like that whatsoever. But, in these situations, especially the first hearing, your client may just blurt out something that you just, the best thing is to truly say nothing.
Right.
Let your attorney do all the talking for you. That doesn't preclude him, if he was indeed under the bad side effects of some drug and later on can prove that. And that's the kind of thing that you would get pharmacological evidence about, health records about, and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's because there does seem to have been, as you said, a temporary mental breakdown for sure.
Michael, let me address first-degree murder. My understanding is that in New York, unless you kill a police officer or like a correctional officer when you're in custody, it's not first-degree murder. And everybody's always confused why it's second-degree murder. I think even the son of Sam, people can check me on this, I think he got prosecuted for second-degree murder because, again, he hadn't killed a police officer, which is the only first-degree murder, or the correctional officer, I believe, in New York State court.
Right. Okay. You've been a prosecutor, you're a defense attorney, and thanks for clarifying that, because that's something that I didn't recall either. Didn't know if I ever know. Don't know if I ever knew it. But when you're talking about this case specifically now, there is what I think a lot of people we're always publicly surprised when there is sympathy for a murder, and it is created a conversation about healthcare, about justified murder, all of these things. Do those sympathies, and as a lawyer, how do you work around those sympathies, both in selecting a jury and prosecuting the case? Because there are people who think that there was justification of his crime.
Well, I'm not one of them.
No, I'm not saying you are either. I'm just saying that in the atmosphere there are now, and so that I would imagine impacts jury selection, and I would imagine makes it another thing you have to contend with as a defense attorney and a prosecutor.
I just want to say my political opinion is that anybody who's spending their time sending a tweet or an email like that should quadruple their efforts to do something about the high cost of healthcare, about the lack of coverage. They should write letters to their elected representatives. They should organize. They should get really involved in the next campaign. That's the way to deal, obviously, with these issues, and not, in my book, any sympathy for this particular person, if that was indeed his motive. I really have, maybe that's the former prosecutor in me, but I really don't have any sympathy for it. In terms of the jury, it's an interesting question, because there's two kinds of challenges to jurors. One are for cause. So anybody who has an axe to grind against the health system or the health delivery system, and that becomes clear during the voir dire, the questioning of the prospective jurors, they can be eliminated for cause. We always worry as trial attorneys that people, Michael, aren't really candid about those opinions. Some people want to get on a jury like this. Maybe some people don't even realize they sort of have that bias, but they don't express it during voir dire. And so you don't get to make that challenge for cause successfully. Then there's a certain number of peremptory challenges. Generally speaking, the defense has a few more than the prosecution. That's kind of like due process. Better that 10 guilty people be cleared than that one innocent person be convicted or railroaded. So we tend to give the defense attorneys a few more peremptory challenges. Sometimes that's controversial, but again, in our system of justice, that seems fair. And then you just sort of get a feeling about the jurors. Now, if you get a feeling of them based on gender or race or something like that, you're not allowed to act on that. And the court is supposed to make sure that neither side acts on that. That, for instance, neither side is eliminating white people or black people because they're white people or they're black people. But, experienced trial lawyers, and they hire consultants too, get a feel for people, what they do for a living. The classic was, if someone was in law enforcement or had a relative in law enforcement, the criminal defense attorney didn't want that person to get on the jury. The other stereotype was that if somebody was in like the social sciences, they were a teacher, they were an artist, that the criminal defense attorney's lawyer did want them to be on the jury. And then there's all sorts of things, how people carry themselves, what you think that connotes. And so both sides will be trying, as they say, not to get the fairest juror, but to get the juror that's seeing the world most their way, both the prosecution and the defense attorney, but not with those impermissible gender, racial, or ethnic stereotypes, or using any of those. And again, if the other side can challenge that, and then you have to state your reasons that are not racial, let's say, for instance. So if the person knows a lot of people, admits to knowing a lot of people who are involved in, I don't know, criminal matters, if they'll actually admit that, well, that's a fair basis. But if you just think, well, wait a second, this person's black, they're not very nicely dressed, they probably know a lot of criminals. If that was what you said to the judge would allow that person to stay on the jury. In other words, they would not allow your peremptory to go through. Normally you'd have a sidebar, you talk about it. But sometimes you can get the feel, sometimes the prospective juror gets a feeling that this one side wanted to challenge him or her and didn't manage to. And so everybody's always worried about, in a jury trial, because it is so personal with each juror, right. That's the great trial lawyers try to always make, and great prosecutors try to always make a very favorable impression on those jurors, try to figure out where they're coming from and try to play to what they think are the predilections of the particular juror.
And that's why so many hire what are called jury experts, because they're people that they know how vitally important when it can be afforded.
I've been doing this over 30 years. I think I know more than they do. I never hire one. But if you have enough money, it's very tempting, right? You want your client. We did everything that we could, including we hired so and so, quote, jury experts. They're usually psychologists or something like that.
Yeah. You see them in the movies maybe more than you see them in real life, but just the fact that they exist tells you a little bit about how important it is for both sides. And I do think that even the silent biases that people may have about insurance and what the motivations may have been would make this, for the prosecution especially, a challenging jury selection just based on that alone, because it isn't a blatant bias, right? It's more of a latent bias that we may have in hearing what his motives were. And again, we're presuming those. We don't know them very well.
Michael, right off the bat, if someone walks into court and looks healthy, I would think that the prosecution wants that person on the jury. Anyone who looks like they've been ill or through the mill with the health system, has a disability, something like that, I suspect that the prosecution does not want that person on the jury. And from then you can extrapolate all kinds of other things. Kim, how are you today?
Hi, good. How are you? Good to see you.
Mike, we go back over 6 years. Kim and I go back over 6 years to the Pat Thurston radio program.
Yeah, probably longer than that.
On the station that shall not be named.
It's interesting that you guys were talking about, these juror experts that come in and help, because I think I've heard a lot of chat that people expect Luigi Mangione to get off of this crime because he comes from money, because it's likely that he doesn't have to worry about the expense of the most expensive lawyer, whether they want to hire jury experts, whatever, that there's funding behind him. And so, if you have money, that the chances are better that you'll beat charges like this. Is there any merit to that?
Well, let's see. There was Alex Murdoch, the lawyer down in South Carolina who had lots of money and got convicted anyway.
I covered that case in South Carolina, actually, and they walked on water till before that. Yeah,
and he had a lot of money, and he was. I think there were paintings of his relatives on the court in the courtroom. They had to take down the paintings of his daddy, who was a big deal lawyer, and his granddaddy, who was a big deal judge, and those portraits were actually sitting in the courtroom where he got convicted of murder down there in South Carolina after spending a lot of money. There was, I always forget her name. But the one who went to trial on the insider trading, the famous lady, her name is escaping me right now.
Martha Stewart.
Martha Stewart. Right. She went to jury trial with very expensive lawyers, and they got clobbered. The lawyers did, and she got convicted. Other people, Michael Milken, had to plead guilty, decided to plead guilty. But you certainly do have some advantages. The problem in an average case, if you have the public defender, some of them are very good, but they're very, very busy. And so people are always worried, even if this woman is really good, really competent, will they have the time to really devote to my case, the public defender? And if they're on a small budget, that's really difficult. I mean, what the government does to you, especially now in these cases, there's so much discovery. They give you an avalanche to go through. You might think, well, this case is about, allegedly murdering one person one day. There will be thousands and thousands of pages of discovery. There'll be examination of the DNA. There'll be everything under the sun. So if you don't have the public defender, who ends up usually being quite overworked, even if they're very good, and if you have a reasonably priced lawyer, they're going to get buried. So, in my cases, I'm very devoted, but a lot of times I end up with hours that I don't get paid for. It's just one of those things. If you have a dedication to do this, and you feel like a commitment to do this, people's civil liberties, not ever having a person who's not guilty ever found guilty, you end up spending a lot of time and a lot of lawyers, it's not just me, don't really get compensated for all the time that they spend. People think it's sort of this wild billing machine and you get paid this hundreds of dollars every hour. And certainly you're supposed to. And if a client can pay you, they ought to. But really, the great defenses, you do need a lot of money. I mean, you look at what very rich people do, and very rich people tend to spend a lot of money on legal fees. I mean, tens of millions of dollars. Milken was supposed to have spent, back when money was money, almost $100 million on his criminal defense. And I believe Milken did not go to trial at the end of the day. I think he entered a guilty plea. So it certainly helped have money, Michael.
Yeah,
unless
I think you're right.
Trump. Unless you're Trump, in which case you take the legal services, but you never pay the legal fee.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the myths. But I think that Trump ended up paying those lawyers. He's now picked some of them to be top Department of Justice officials, the ones who defended him. And they've been less controversial because RFK Jr. and Hegseth and this Kash Patel at the FBI and Tulsi Gabbard, they're all so controversial that some of them kind of, go under the radar a little bit. But he's picked his own lawyers to be like the number 2 person at the Department of Justice, the person under this Bondi. He absolutely, I think, paid some of those lawyers. And then the tips on cryptocurrency, priceless, if he gave them any tips.
Right. Well, we could talk about Mangione with you for a long time, and I imagine Mark and this show will going forward because it is an evolving case. To me, the jury part of it is so fascinating, and we also even don't know. There's legacy wealth in his family. We don't know what kind of wealth he has. His grandfather owned a lot of property, and they went to private schools, but that could also mean that there's nothing left. So we'll find that out as it gets closer. Let you started to tease us a little bit. We don't have very much time, but tell me a little bit about this, Christopher Wray leaving the FBI and Kash Patel coming in, and what that means for the FBI and sort of, Trump is the president. So in essence, the president does have control over a lot of those institutions, but it's usually when it comes to the Justice Department, they try and err at least on the side of having law enforcement people there, people with history and justice. And now Kash Patel, who you mentioned, is stepping in. And he's coming in with what seems like an agenda, even though many senators are saying, oh, no, he didn't mean that when he said it.
Well, first of all, you should believe what people say, especially when they write them in books. And he's got a published enemies list, and he's made his goal of having a vendetta and retribution against political enemies absolutely clear. And we've gotten to this moment where that's not immediately disqualifying, which is really scary. One thing that I don't like about the reporting that I've seen on it is that people take it as a fait accompli that he's going to get confirmed. And I still don't think that he's going to be confirmed. I think if you're a Republican senator, you don't want to bandy about that you're not going to support him, that you think he's a terrible choice. You're not going to bandy that about, but the hearings on him are going to be absolutely brutal. The blowback from rank and file FBI special agents is going to be absolutely brutal. Certainly one of the results of this is that the 10-year term for an FBI director is gone. The Democrats will be the laughing stock of the world if they take back the presidency in 4 years and keep Kash Patel or whoever Trump picks. It's obvious that that's gone. And I think one reason that people don't want to say what I'm saying, which is that it's obvious that that term is gone, and now every Democratic president will come in with a Democratic FBI director, and likewise every Republican, because that's what the Republicans are doing anyway. That's what Trump is doing anyway. I think one reason is that there's other terms. The Federal Reserve Chairman, Powell, has a term. If every term is meaningless, if it's the unitary executive, and so the president can always exercise all those executive functions, and all these independent boards are just, they're just a wish, but they're not a reality. People are worried, will he fire Powell? And, Powell is going to be very pressured to do Trump's bidding because it seems like there's no consensus to really live up to these terms. Some of these boards, you name them, the FTC, the FCC, everyone that you can think of, if they're really not independent agencies, if these are all executive functions, which is the idea of this unitary authority, then all of those people are at risk. And I have to say one more thing, if you don't mind, which I thought was an outrage. There was a vote for a member of the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, yesterday in the Senate, because Manchin and Sinema wouldn't support a Democratic woman, no less. People who say, well, elect Sinema, it'll be great for the women. Elect a woman senator, it'll be great for the woman. Here is an incredibly competent woman who was up for renomination to the National Labor Relations Board. She's pro-union. Wow, all those union guys, all those working class guys who voted for Trump. Here she was, pro-union, a record of helping unions and working people. Manchin and Sinema knifed her, and the vote ended up being 50 to 49. It wasn't even a tie, so they couldn't bring Vice President Harris in to help the situation. Hopefully, Biden will take another shot at this and really try to whip people, and Sinema and Manchin will maybe be embarrassed. People will think, what do they plan to do next in life? I wonder if it's something that's going to be pro-labor or something that's anti-labor, and speculate whether maybe this anti-labor vote is because Manchin and Sinema don't plan to be a member of the working class after they were both basically thrown out of the Senate. They were both really, reviled. And they still need Manchin and Sinema for a little bit longer. But after January 3rd, can you imagine what their legacy is going to be? All of the progressive, common sense legislation that Manchin and Sinema got in the way of after taking a job and running as Democrats. Sort of remarkable, huh, Michael?
It is absolutely remarkable. And although it isn't, because what's remarkable is that any Democrats would be trusting Manchin and Sinema to do anything but what they did in a way, because it's been 4 years of Stonewall.
Well, West Virginia was such a red state, Michael. West Virginia was such a red state. I guess you can say, thank God that Manchin came along and did whatever he did do as a Democrat. But Sinema, what a farce.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Manchin, whatever you thought of him, created a Senate majority just by being a Democrat and staying a Democrat. So to that, he gets some credit from Democrats. Spencer Jaffe in the chat, $5 super chat donation, and 3 words: go David Katz. So that is that you have support on this show, and I'm glad you came in, even though the pinch hitter was at the plate today. And I appreciate your time and your expertise and wisdom on the jury selection, because it's fascinating to me.
You pinch hit great, and tell Mark not to be like the guy who let Lou Gehrig play that game for him. Okay.
Wally Pipp. You're talking about Wally Pipp. I promise I won't be Wally Pipp.
We're not going to turn your show into a sports one. They already did that to us at the station that shall not be named, and some of us sports love. We don't appreciate that at all. But your producer and I guess you, and I think Kim, you're nuts about some sports. And by the way, the Bears are coming down here to play. My Cal Bears. I went to college and law school at Berkeley. They're actually getting play down here, even though we're in the ACC. We're getting to play down here in LA next week. So go Bears.
It's pretty good because you're in my ACC too, because I went to UVA. So for some reason, somehow UVA and SMU and Cal are in the same football conference. And,
something about the Pacific teams playing on the Atlantic coast. I don't know. We're pretty bi-coastal, much more than we want to be. Can you imagine those?
There's never been anything like this.
Everyone, and they have to go back and travel all the way across the country while they're in college, and they're not going to be multimillionaires like some of the football players. They're just kids who shouldn't have to go. We love Virginia, we love SMU, but it's crazy to have them go 3,000 miles to compete in sports.
I agree. We've overstayed our sports because I promised only 47 seconds, but no Contendo gave $2 in the super chat and wants to ask a question of you, David. Why are homicide case donations? We got to do this quickly. Why are homicide case donations not considered interference when people donate to a legal fund or whatever? I suspect.
First of all, it's spelled with 2 I's, not with 2 O's. It's not the killing of a homosexual.
Right. Okay. Well, I think it was probably a typo. They're right next to each other on the keyboard. Yeah.
Well, they used to. I was a DA in Brooklyn one summer, and it was pronounced just like that. It was pronounced just like that. So I always got that joke all the time. When people in the office would say that. Why are they not donations? I'm not quite understanding the question. I'll try to answer it fast. But you mean, why can you donate to a defense fund for someone charged with murder?
Yeah, not have it be considered interference is what he or she is asking, I think. So.
Well, it shouldn't be interference. For God's sake, the way the Supreme Court has said speech, money is speech. I mean, this is something that you want to say. You want to say that you hope so-and-so is found not guilty and you want to contribute to their defense fund. That's as old as America, people contributing to defense funds. I think Alexander Hamilton, didn't he pass the hat? You see it in the show. When he was about to get charged or something, he went to people and said, help my criminal defense fund. It happened with that guy who went up to Wisconsin. Remember, he went to that town in Wisconsin and killed a couple of people. And then he became a hero.
Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah.
Rittenhouse, right wing. And he got almost $1 million from people. So I don't want to deter any of that, especially if it's a client of mine. Feel absolutely free. And the law leaves you absolutely free to contribute anybody to the criminal defense. Remember, the presumption of innocence, and not everybody's guilty. I've gotten a lot of acquittals, including in federal court. So not everybody's guilty. Don't ever jump to that conclusion.
Former Assistant U.S. Attorney David Katz, thank you so much for being on the show. And you will, I presume, be back when Mark is back in this seat next week. Thanks so much.
Okay, Lou Gehrig. Great to be with you, Michael.
All right, Wally. That was great, and we learned a little bit more about sort of. To me, that's such an important part of this case with the United Healthcare murder is how they're going to find that jury and what goes into selecting a jury of people in America who, many seem to be really pissed off at the healthcare system and certainly at insurers. And I appreciate also Luis coming in with a $5 super chat donation. This segment, absolutely great. Can Katz sure be a weekly segment? Go Bears, go Cavs whenever they play. And we'll see if we can make it weekly. But Mark loves talking to David Katz, and I can see why. I believe
he's here.
Yeah,
really.
So
excited.
The Mark Thompson Show.
A treat for all of you is my old friend Mark Caputo, who is among the finest, if not the finest, political reporters in this country, covering national politics and Florida politics from Florida. He's been with every place you've heard of, and he's going to be, well, I'll let him tell us where he's going because I don't want to say anything out of school. Mark, welcome to the Mark Thompson Show, and I'm happy to have you again.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. So tell me this, Caputo, where can people who listen to the show see your work?
Well, I'm at the Bulwark now, and starting in early January, I will be going to Axios.
Okay. I knew that. It was one of those questions you ask when you know the answer, but you're not sure if you can say it yet. But yes, that's great, and congratulations. And let's talk, Mark. This is a politically hungry show, and we talked yesterday about these rumors. We'll start in Florida, and then we can go a little national. Laura Trump, who is the daughter-in-law of the president-elect, being talked about as Ron DeSantis' pick to fill the Senate of Marco Rubio upon his confirmation for State Department. What is this really happening? What have you heard about this?
Well, she'd like the job. I think it's unlikely that Ron DeSantis appoints Laura Trump. I think it would have been likelier if there were a trade between President-elect Trump and Ron DeSantis. DeSantis being DOD Secretary, Defense Secretary, for Laura Trump getting appointed to Rubio's Senate seat. But a few things. One, looks like Pete Hegseth, at least the Trump transition team feels so, and lots of Republican senators feel so, Pete Hegseth's going to get confirmed, and Ron DeSantis doesn't really want to do a trade anyway, regardless of whom it's for. And then lastly, he thinks Lara Trump, newly minted Florida woman, hasn't really paid her dues in the state, and that other people should at least be vetted, if not be appointed instead of her. So I think there's basically 3 reasons that's not going to happen, or probably not going to happen. I don't want to see it's definitely not going to happen, because you never know. Maybe Pete Hegseth doesn't cross the finish line, and maybe Ron DeSantis does become DOD secretary, and maybe he winds up magically appointing Lara Trump despite these other reservations. So it's unlikely, not impossible.
Do you feeling that Trump world is wants to keep Ron DeSantis at a distance?
Oh, they hate him. Yeah, they hate him. Yeah. A lot of people in Trump's orbit work for Ron DeSantis. I mean, Trump's campaign is a heavy Florida feel, and it's got a lot of top Trump people in it. Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, was unceremoniously, unfairly, wrongly terminated by a jealous and petty DeSantis in 2019 after his come-from-behind win for governor, and Wiles was getting a lot of credit for it. There was some, skullduggery that happened, and she got unfairly blamed for a leak, which, like, common sense told you she wasn't the leak, but whatever. So she got bounced. Susie since then has moved on with her life, and I've put on pretty good authority that, her attitude is like, look, if Donald Trump wants to do something, then, my job is to help him do it. I mean, not criminally, obviously, but in the context of doing certain political.
Not obviously, but I know when coming from Wiles, it's obvious.
Exactly. But the other thing is you got to say it, because who knows? They're like, oh, she's going to help him become a fascist. Right. There may never be an election yet. Whatever. Sorry, I rolled my eyes in the back of my head so hard I kind of but there are other people who also work for DeSantis. Taylor Buttigieg is a top advisor to Trump and is going to be in the White House. James Blair, same thing. And on and on and on. So there are a number of Brian Hughes, the consultant who was actually made DeSantis essentially what he is today. He persuaded the guy to run for Congress, masterminded the strategy for DeSantis to win the congressional seat. And then DeSantis unceremoniously, basically bounced him after DeSantis won the primary, while Hughes was like a top spokesman for the Trump campaign. So a lot of people just don't like Ron DeSantis in Trump's orbit. So safe to say, yeah, they certainly wouldn't prefer him to be around. Yeah. But that's ancillary to what Trump wants. Like, Trump wants it, it's going to happen. And Trump made the call. Like, when Pete Hegseth looked like he was floundering, when Trump was a little annoyed with Hegseth, and the people were annoyed with Hegseth because Hegseth didn't disclose, like, look, I know I was accused of sexual assault. I didn't do it. I was never criminally charged. And, oh, by the way, there's a police report. And, oh, by the way, there is a financial settlement that everyone keeps quiet. He never mentioned that. That annoyed Trump, as you can understand, and helped lead to the call that Trump made to, DeSantis, like, hey, look, this Pete guy doesn't work out. Maybe you and I should talk about DOD.
And do they have, as far as that kind of a relationship? From afar.
They do now.
They do now. They do have that.
Yeah.
And
they did before. Then they had a falling out because DeSantis was buying his own supply. COVID. He was the governor that COVID built, right? He made Republican hearts go pitter patter in late 2020, early 2021, especially after January 6th. Trump is down. The conservative movement was looking at Ron DeSantis as being the guy who could take on the establishment, piss off the national media, and prove the experts wrong, and show a new sort of way of governing, sort of competent Trumpism, so to speak. Polls were showing DeSantis could beat Trump, and as it looked like he was going to run for president, Trump increasingly got annoyed that DeSantis was going to do it, and the two kind of had a falling out, but Trump won. And to quote one of DeSantis's advisors right before he dropped out, when he told me a few days before DeSantis dropped out, the debate was, does he drop out and immediately endorse Donald Trump after the Iowa caucus? And the answer to that was yes. And the advisor said the reason for that is if you're going to eat a shit sandwich, you need to eat it whole instead of in small bites. And boy, DeSantis just gulped that right down, did his part. The two have made up, and so they're cool.
Yeah, I mean, and that's all it takes is to be re-loyal to Donald Trump, because we talk about it all the time, that the loyalty.
It helps, but to be clear, there's one job that Donald Trump was not going to offer to Ron DeSantis, and that was Attorney General.
Right.
That has to be 110% loyalty. That's why I went to Gates and then to Bondi, Pam Bondi.
So Florida having a big moment, and let's talk about we can talk about Bondi a little bit, and people who don't know Pam Bondi, but before she was on the radar because of Donald Trump, what did we know about her in kind of, I mean, I know her efforts in elections and why Donald Trump is so fascinated by her, but what should we know about Pam Bondi that, if not being in Florida, we don't know?
Pam Bondi was a prosecutor in Tampa, in Hillsborough County, and that's the largest media market and one of the most important in the state. And she used that, and she was a frequent Fox commentator. And she used that to parlay into getting elected Florida's Attorney General in 2010. Served as sort of a Tea Party era conservative. She's kind of very chipper. And there is sort of a disconnect when you meet her between this kind of very conservative, pro-business Republican and conservative Republican and this kind of just very chipper person, right? Like when you meet her, like she's an animal rights person and all this stuff. The two knocks you're going to really hear on her is, well, there's three, but the two big ones on policy was, or in politics as well, her office didn't sign on to the New York State Attorney General's civil suit against Trump University. And about the time that it didn't sign on, her Attorney General's reelection campaign political committee, or her related political committee, took a large donation from Trump. And so it looked like a quid pro quo. Now, it's been denied by Bondi, and the chief of staff, actually, who made the decision not to prosecute, who I know and who told me at the time, and who, by the way, is now the Supreme Court, the Florida Supreme Court Chief Justice, Carlos Muñiz, he had said, look, basically a lot of this was just, more sort of politics-oriented policy. We saw Eric Schneiderman, who is the Attorney General in New York. He's suing this conservative businessman. And it was like, we're not going to sign on to anything that Schneiderman is doing. It had nothing to do with like, oh, we'll take money. But, politics, timing is everything in politics. It looked terrible. So she got whacked for that. And, that's still around today. And I'll let people make up their own mind. I can't say for one way or another that politics did or didn't in that regard, like a quid pro quo, affect it. So reasonable minds can disagree. The other thing is, Florida was ground zero for the foreclosure crisis. There were two attorneys who claimed that they really wanted to go after the predatory lending industry, and they were working for, and they were fired. And they claim it was for these kind of insider deals that she had struck. So those are the two main things you're going to hear. The lesser thing you're going to hear is back in the day, she had gotten a rescue dog, and it turned out it was like a Katrina rescue dog from Hurricane Katrina, and the people located the dog and wanted it back, and she didn't want to give it back, and so that was like a huge row.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's like kind of silly. Yeah. She and Matt Gaetz, who obviously know each other from Florida, they were both huge animal rights people. She's a big animal rights person, and then. On more of the plus side, back in the day when I worked at Politico in Politico, Florida, we did a rather large expose on this predatory, powerful state senator who was the state Senate budget chairman in Tallahassee, who was pawing women and the like. And Bondi's office lent support to a kind of bringing attention to that. That's not something you hear enough about, because understandably, the detractors have that that moment, but I want to kind of be balanced in some of the remarks about her.
No, understood. Yeah, there are things to acquit her, and actually several from what I've known about her and reading about her. But the Trump stuff is what people are fixated on now. Your most recent work at the Bulwark, a piece a couple of days ago, talking about the confirmation process. We'll go national from Florida now. I wanted to talk about Matt Gaetz, but not much to talk about with Matt Gaetz. He's withdrawn. Nope. They're going to have a special election. He's going to have an anchor at ON, and there goes Matt Gaetz. So let's talk about this confirmation process and what you're seeing. A lot of people go into these confirmation processes who don't follow them very closely, who think that, how could these people be confirmed? And then they get confirmed, and senators do what senators do, and they urge caution, and then they vote for that person.
Yep.
What are you seeing this time around that makes you think this is maybe a little different at all?
Well, it's a little different in that, Donald Trump has put forward, 5, including Matt Gaetz, controversial picks. You had Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, who we just talked about, the Fox host who had been accused of, sexual misconduct and drunkenness, allegations which he denies, to be clear. Kash Patel for FBI director, who was sort of pledged to go after the media, investigate those who had printed and talked about the Russia investigation. Tulsi Gabbard, former Democratic Congresswoman, former Democratic candidate for president, who also had sort of an unorthodox views on foreign policy, traveled to Syria and basically said Assad wasn't our enemy. And, there was a lot of heat over that. Well, she left the Democratic Party and became a top Trump surrogate, along with Bobby Kennedy. Same thing, who would be an HHS secretary under Trump's appointment regime. Oh, by the way, Gabbard would be or will be, if she's confirmed, the office of National Intelligence Director. So all 4 of them are, rather controversial. But, in the past, like maybe a president would pick 1 or 2 and someone would withdraw beforehand. So you had that with Gaetz. Here you just got a lot of people, and it's generating a lot of heat. But the Trump people have dispensed with this idea like, oh, we want 60 votes or 75 votes. Their thing is, we got 53 senators. It takes 50 plus 1. It takes 51 votes, because sometimes J.D. Vance, who will be the vice president when he takes office and will be the tiebreaker on 50-50 votes, like that's what we need, and that's what we're going to get. So there's just basically, not that they wouldn't take Democratic votes, but this is solely like Republican primary politics, which is, as I wrote in this piece about the Hegseth situation with Joni Ernst, the Iowa senator who was initially resisting him and then got serious blowback from the MAGA grassroots and started shuffling back rightward when she realized like her Washingtonitis might have gotten the better of her, is you either jump on the Trump train as far as they're concerned, or you get tied to the Trump train tracks and you get run over. So that's essentially what they face there. RFK might face the roughest sledding because he's got a lot of enemies. Like the pharmaceutical industry doesn't like him. He was, in his words, pro-choice. A lot of conservatives don't necessarily like that. In the view of a lot of normies, he's a kook when it comes to vaccines and seed oils and all these other very chemtrails. So, he doesn't really have a natural constituency in the Senate. Like Democrats hate him because he had voted, like by and large, because he ran against, he's still President Biden, and then switched parties and backed Trump. And we saw what happened there. So that could be a little more difficult. But in the end, the general belief of most Republicans in the Senate, but to be clear, you need to get 50 plus 1. You need to get 51. Is that these are Trump's nominees. Trump is the president. Trump won in a landslide. For Republicans, that means you win a plurality of the national vote because they hadn't won the popular vote since 2004. And therefore, you got to give him his picks. And so I think your frame of your question is, we all still kind of think these are all going to go through, but we'll see what we see.
Yeah, and before we finish, I know Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, two senators, Republican senators, are the ones that Democrats look at and think, oh, these are the ones that can't possibly support these nominees. They seem more reasonable. They voted against Kavanaugh, or one did.
My dog is jumping on me. This is bucking. Well, people like dogs. This is Peanut the dachshund. Sorry, that's why I'm occupying myself. Yeah, he's biting me now. Bad little dog.
On the Mark Thompson show. But what I was saying is, who else besides Peanut should these people be looking at in the Senate? Democrats who really don't want to see these, and Republicans who don't want to see these confirmations happen. Do you see anybody else who's movable on some of these people specifically?
I mean, so the Trump operation generally thinks that Murkowski from Alaska, Collins from Maine, and McConnell in Kentucky are generally that block of three is the most likely to be in opposition. But again, it takes four. So it kind of floats between, like, will it be Mark Rounds from, is it South Dakota? One of the Dakotas.
Yeah, Mike Rounds from North Dakota, I think. Oh no,
North
South
Dakota. Okay, so I think it's South.
I think it's South. It is South, 100% South. Yeah.
And then now I'm now going to prove that I'm a true Florida man and ignoramus. The new guy from Utah, right?
Yeah. It's Curtis John.
Curtis. Yeah, Trump didn't support him in the primary. Like, he doesn't owe Trump anything.
Right.
But at the same time, on Monday, Tom Cotton, who is the conference chair for the Republican Party in the state Senate, or not the state Senate, the U.S. Senate, the senator from the state of Arkansas, he said on Twitter, he pointed out, I expect the Republican members will vote for the Republican president's picks. And he pointed out that his staff did research, and since the time of Clinton, the nominees for a president only got no votes from members of their own party twice in the U.S. Senate in confirmations. And his point was, everyone in the building in the Capitol was talking about, like, oh, the Senate always claims one victim. The Senate always, like, stops this or X, Y, and Z. And he's pointing out, like, no, guys, the tradition actually is your party supports your party president's picks.
Right. But since the time of Adams, we haven't had appointments like Senator Booth.
True, my friend.
There is that. Mark Caputo, thank you for your time and for your perspective and input. I think everybody is a little smarter about what we asked you about today, and that's great. And thank Peanut for stopping by.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Peanut's like nipping at me. I think it's
that's fine.
Like, this dog knows when it's 4 p.m. Man, he is hungry. I mean, like, on the nose. You know
well, this dog knows when it's 1 p.m. Pacific because he's hungry too. So, So Mark, good luck at Axios. I will see you on the road. Okay, thanks a lot.
I appreciate you. See you.
All right, so we got Mark Caputo. He, like I said, he knows a lot, Kim. He's very plugged into one of the most politically fascinating states, and he's also a national political reporter. So it's good stuff.
I know I need to get his email address from you, and he switches to Axios so we can have him on the show when you're absent.
Yeah, when I'm absent, please.
When you're,
all my guests, I'm saying, don't come on when Mark Thompson's hosting Mark Thompson. Like, what?
Absolutely. I can't believe tomorrow is Friday. We've almost completed a full Michael Schur week on the show, and it felt like it went like that.
And what do I do tomorrow when it's my segment? I guess I have someone to fill it, actually. So
thank goodness, because I didn't know. I thought maybe we could have Mark Thompson. I forget his name. You know, that guy.
Yeah,
back on the show again. But yeah, no, I would love to have another political reporter back in your slot since you're in the captain's chair.
I think we're going to have a U.S. congressman on tomorrow to tell us what's going on in Washington. So I'm going to bring one of the people I know in Congress on to talk to us a little bit. But also, we should mention before we say goodbye for the day that tomorrow I'm excited too because it's Florida Fabulous Florida, Florida Fabulous Friday, whatever the hell it is. And I get to play. Yeah. I'm always in the green room when it's happening, and I love talking about it. I think it's hysterical. I love that segment. And then also, it's a good time to remind people that on December 21st, We have the Mark Thompson Show Holiday Meetup, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And you can sign up at PayPal with a $50 donation. It's a Christmas donation. Lock up your spot. Meet up with it's a holiday donation. My apologies. I forgot that it was to say holiday. And when you make that donation, just note meet up with your donation. You can RSVP as well at mtsmeetup@gmail.com. And and tomorrow we will have a really good show, and we'll finish off the week really strong. I thank Albert. I thank you all for your indulgence of 47 seconds of sports. You'll get that again tomorrow. And for your constant contributions. And Kim, thanks as always for organizing.
On time, bye-bye.